in transform domain, and today we'll start a new topic. The topic for today is dynamics of discrete time systems. So what was our general approach till today? Uh, Till today, what we did was that we always try to have some kind of an input output system. It can be single input, single output, or multiple input, multiple output. But in any case, we wanted to have an input which was given as u of s once you do a Laplace transform, and when it goes through the transfer function, what you get is y of s, which was so let us put a bar here, so y of s, which is the output function, and then what you do is you do an inverse Laplace transform of y bar of s, and that will give you y of t, and this will give me the dynamics of the output variable, right? So this was the general approach that we adopted till now for analysis of any system. Now, while we did all of these analysis, all of these functions were continuous functions. So y of u of t, the dynamical variable x of t, the output variable y of t were all continuous functions, right? And by continuous functions, I mean obviously continuous functions in time. So the only variable that I have in any of the dynamical systems is time. So they were all continuous functions. Let's take an example and see how this can be a problematic case when you try to apply this to a control system. So let me do one thing. Let me first make a diagram for the system. So we'll consider a continuous stirred tank reactor, which is a jacketed vessel. So there is a CSTR, and then I have a jacket. I have the flow of the fluid, jacket fluid. I have the flow of the reactants, and I have the flow of the products out. Okay, these are the streams. So let's say I have this liquid level, and this is a jacketed CSTR. Okay, so now what's going to happen? I want to maintain certain temperature of this liquid inside the tank, right? So I have process temperature, process temperature. Let us call it as TP. Okay, so this is the process temperature. I want it to be set to a particular value, and that will be called as set point or set temperature. Okay, and that is TS. We want the system to be at TS, temperature TS. The process temperature can be lesser than set temperature, or it can be more than set temperature. If the process temperature, if the process temperature is greater than Ts, what will happen? This flow rate. So this is, there will be a flow rate of the jacket fluid, flow rate in the jacket fluid. So if this is the case, then Qj will go up. We know why this should happen, because your system has heated to a temperature which is larger than the set temperature. So the flow rate, if you increase the flow rate of the jacket fluid, the Reynolds number would increase. The Reynolds number, the increased Reynolds number will increase the Nusselt number, and the increased Nusselt number will result in increased heat transfer coefficient. As a result, more heat would be transferred and your temperature will come down. Okay, and the opposite action will take place when TP is less than Ts. So your Q jacket should come down. Right now, how exactly will the Qj change as a function of Tp, or the difference between Tp and Ts? That will come from your model equation. So your model equation will have the quantities which involve the heat balance around the jacket, the heat balance in the tank, and those will be coupled. Those will be continuous. So let me write. So the model, we have already done this. Please look into the previous analysis which we have done. So the model equations will be continuous ODEs. Okay, those will be ODEs which are continuous in time. Now let's see. I implement a control system such that depending upon the difference between TP and TS, this action will take place. So there would be a valve here. So there would be a valve here, and this valve will open or close depending upon the error epsilon, which is TP minus TS. Does anybody have any doubt? No. So depending upon the value and the magnitude of and sign of Tp minus Ts, the changes in the valve position or valve seat will take place. Now, where is the problem in this entire setup? How would you note this epsilon, the error signal? There would be a temperature measurement device. Okay. Let's say there would be a thermocouple. Okay. And this thermocouple will be sending a signal, an EMF, which will correspond to the temperature of which will correspond to the process temperature, right? And then this has to be fed to a controller. A controller is nothing but, at least today, it's a computer, right? So now the question is, the only input to the computer can be a digital signal. Okay, so the input to a computer, which is basically your controller where your control algorithm has been fed, it's a so it's not input, the processable signal. The processable signal to a computer is a digital signal, which is discrete, right? It's not a continuous signal, but your TP, process signal, let's write signal because it can be anything in general. It's a continuous signal. right? So what is required? You need to change conversion of a continuous signal to a discrete time signal so that the computer can digest the information which you are providing to it. This is the first problem. You cannot simply implement a control algorithm unless you have a way of converting your continuous signal. Continuous signal is the process signal to a discrete time signal so that you can feed it to the computer. Fine. This is the first problem. Second problem is that your model equations are continuous. Your model equations are continuous and your feed, because the equations are processed in a computer, so the feed to your model equations are discrete, right? So therefore model equations have to be now converted to discrete equations. So model equations are continuous, which need to be converted to discrete time domain, right? So you cannot simply have a continuous equation and give the feed to the equation which is discrete. So you need to find the equivalent discrete time domain which will be processed by your computer. So the first problem is conversion of a continuous signal to a discrete time signal. Second problem, conversion of the model equations from continuous domain to a discrete domain. Now, if your model equations are discrete, so what do the model equations do? See, so let me draw this and let's try to see what do the model equations do. Model equations are nothing but functions, right? So these are your model equations. So if you give discrete signal to a discrete model, you are going to get a discrete output, right? And what does this discrete output mean? Okay, so here in this larger scheme, although we are writing it as model equations, this is nothing but, this whole box is nothing but control action, right? So your control action will give you a signal or an action which is discrete. So what is the final control element in this particular system? The final control element here is the control wall. This is the final control element, right? So let's see what happens. Your input to the system so this is time, and your input to the system was continuous, and this is temperature T, this is process temperature T. Okay, and what you start observing is that your temperature has started going up. Your temperature has started going up. Now we will come to see how you convert this continuous signal to a discrete signal. But then what's going to happen? Your control valve position. Okay, so you can write here the distance in the control valve, or you can convert it to Q jacket. What's going to happen? Well, it after this control action, what's going to happen is the control action will be invoked here, and what you will see is that your output is going to be discrete, which means that your valve position, so this is the valve position, I'm trying to qualitatively draw some kind of a opening of the valve. So what's going to happen? Your valve is going to open in a discrete manner, which means what's going to happen when you are here, because your input also is discrete time. So your input also, all you have is a signal which is here, the signal which is here, the signal which is here, and signal is not present at other locations, right? So therefore the valve will open for some time. When you are at this location, the valve will open, and then again the valve will close, then again the valve will open, and again valve will close, again valve will open, and again valve will close, and this action will not be continuous. So you would want ideally the valve to open in a programmed manner, right? You would like the valve position. So let me try to make the valve. Okay, so how it is going to happen is that your valve should go up continuously, right? Because that's what happens in reality. But because you have implemented a digital control system, the valve will not go up continuously. It will settle to this value, then it will come to this position, then it will come to this position, and so on. And that is something not desirable, because then you will keep on getting fluctuating signals in your fluctuating flow rates in your system. You want the valve to go out in a continuous manner. Your temperature is increasing continuously. It's a different matter that you have converted it to a discrete time system for your computational analysis. But what you do for computational analysis doesn't change your system. So therefore the system is continuous, the temperature is increasing continuously, and as a result your valve position also should open or go up continuously. But because you have implemented a control system, now what's happening? Your continuous increase in the temperature is seen by the control system as a discrete increase in the temperature. Model equations are discrete, so therefore discrete input and discrete model equations are resulting into a discrete control action, which means the valve is going up in a discrete manner. You don't want that. So then what do you do? What you do is you convert this discrete output to a continuous output, right? So first, conversion of a continuous signal to a discrete time signal. Second, conversion of model equations which are continuous to a discrete time domain. And the final task for analysis of dynamics in discrete time domain is conversion of discrete time output signal to a continuous signal. This is the final task. And what we are going to do today is we'll see how each of these three steps can be accomplished. Okay, so let's first start with conversion of continuous models to discrete time models. Okay, so conversion of continuous models to discrete time models. I'm sure you already have an elementary idea of how this is done. This is done is basically you look at the time as a continuous arrow. So this is time. This is time. And then what you do is you say that I don't start with time t is equal to 0 and every possible real number from time t is equal to 0 to time t is equal to say capital Tn, which is some real number. You don't say that all of these points exist. Rather, you say that only some of these points exist. So you are discretizing the time, right? So between the first and the second point, the the magnitude of time is t. So then the next will become 2t, the next will become 3t, and so on. And then you say that I can do this observation only at these time intervals. The other time intervals do not exist. Okay, so following this, what you can do is you can have the definition of your derivative. Well, there are several. One of the common ways of defining this is yn minus 1 minus yn divided by capital T. This becomes the definition of your derivative. So we are converting a continuous model, continuous time model to a discrete time model. So yn is the amplitude. You call it amplitude, but this is basically the value of the function of the continuous function at Tn. Okay, the amplitude or the value of the continuous function at 10 time Tn. So now in general, if you have a first order system, if you have a system described by first order dynamics, you can write this as dy by dt equals f of y, and then you have a parameter a. You have the parameter a, right? So then you can apply this definition here and you can find the discrete time equivalent model. But our standard equation for the first order system was that first order system is described by tau times dy by dt plus y is gain times u of t. Right? We described our first order system using this equation. So let's try and convert this equation to a discrete time domain. So this will become tau times y n plus 1 minus yn upon t plus yn equals k times un, right? And let's see what this will become equal to. This will become equal to yn plus 1 is equal to this will become 1 minus or plus 1 minus t by tau times yn plus plus k t by tau times un, right? So now I have written a discrete time model for my continuous equation. So this is the discrete time model. And what does this tell me? What does this tell me? This tells me that the amplitude, so let me write here, amplitude at time Tn plus 1, the amplitude at time Tn plus 1 can be obtained from the amplitude at time Tn and the system parameters. So if you have the system parameters and the amplitude of the signal at time instant Tn, so you can determine the magnitude at next time instant, right? Is it true for a continuous signal? Yes, because in a continuous signal you give y0 equals y0, which means that I have y, I have t. If this is t0, I mean t is equal to 0. If you have certain amplitude which is y0, then you know y0 and you know the derivative from here, from this model equation. So you go to the, you determine the evolution continuously. Here this will become y0, so then you will know y1 by substituting this in this equation. Once you know y1, then y2 will be obtained by substituting y1 in this equation. So now then you get y2 and so on. Okay, so the system is well defined. Similarly, I encourage you to determine the continuous discrete domain model equation for a standard second order system. For a higher order system, or we can say multiple input, multiple output system, multiple input, multiple out. So what is the most general equation? The most general equation can be written as dy1 by dt equals a, in standard notation it will be plus a11y1 plus a12y2 equals b11u1 plus b12u2 and dy2 by dt equals plus a21y1 plus a22y2 equals b21u1 plus b22u2, right? And then what will you do? What you will do is you will invoke the definition of derivative again. So what's going to happen is that now you will have two indices, y1 at n plus 1 minus y1 at n divided by t is equal to plus a11 y1n. Remember that we now need two indices, one to show time and the second the first index is to show the variable and the second index is to show the time, plus a12 y2n equals b11 u1n plus b12 u2n, and this will become y2n plus 1 minus y2n by t plus a21 y2n plus a22 y, sorry, this will be 1n, this will be 2n equals b21 u1n plus b22 u2n. You will do rearrangements and then you will write this in terms of the vector y 1 n plus 1 y two n plus 1. This will become a matrix times your y1 n plus 1 n y2 n plus another matrix times u1 n u2 n, right? So instead of, and the matrix will be simply a11 a2 a12 a21 a22 and so on. So now you have converted your continuous model to a discrete time model. This is how you do the conversion. Fine. Okay. Now uh, the second and an interesting point which needs to be looked into is the conversion of continuous input signal to a discrete time signal, right? Let's see how do I do this. So I had a tank in which I put a thermocouple. The thermocouple generates an EMF which is continuous time, right? Which is continuous time. Now I need to convert this continuous signal to a discrete signal. What I do is I put a switch here, right? See whether the switch is closed or open, the temperature, the variable on the of this in the system still exists, right? So it does not matter. I am reading that particular signal only as per my wish, right? So see what is the scheme? Your continuous signal exists. What I am doing is that I am reading the continuous signal as per my wish, right? So if so the continuous signal, so this is process temperature, and this is time. So my signal is this. I'm emphasizing that there will be some statistical fluctuations in the system. So therefore you cannot expect exactly one value, but on an average it will be a continuous one valued system, single valued system, right? Now I do one thing. I switch this, I put this switch in a closed position, and then what happens? I will get this signal. I will record that signal. So therefore I have gained access to this signal. Then I will open it again. After some time, I will do this at regular intervals of time. And what I'm getting is a set of discrete signals, right? There are two issues when I do this particular operation, right? Let's see the first issue. The first issue is that uh, somebody comes and reports to me as an engineer that I'm seeing a variation in the temperature. I'm seeing oscillations in my system. Okay. And then I say, okay, fine, let me go and do this measurement. I do this measurement in this particular manner. What do I see is that my signal, which is discrete time domain signal, is simply this. So I say, okay, You're wrong, I'm correct. There is no variation in temperature. There is no fluctuation in the temperature. But then this observation of constant signal is just an artifact of the reason that I'm sampling this, I'm opening and closing this valve at not sufficiently large, sufficiently smaller intervals of time. Because in reality, you may observe or you may have the correct trend which looks like this, right? So what's happening? I am choosing my system to be sampled at such time intervals, such that I'm always getting the same magnitude of the signal. I mean, the drawing is not very good, so just disregard that. But what I mean to emphasize is that your discrete time signal looks like a continuous amplitude or continuous magnitude function, but in reality it may not be. So if I reduce this distance, what will I do is, what will I get is, I will actually observe these fluctuations or oscillations in my system. So first thing which you should absolutely know, and if you have done courses on mathematics, numerical techniques, you would know that your system is affected by the fineness of the discretization mesh. So you need to operate this valve at correct frequency so that you have a correct resolution of the signal. First thing. Second thing is that the moment you have, so I have the valve and I have this valve here. There is a certain time which your system will take for this valve to come down, remain seated here, not this valve, this switch to come down, remain seated here and go up again, right? This will not happen in zero instant of time, zero interval of time. There will be a finite time for which the signal, the switch will come down, it will remain there and it will come back. So ideally what you would be expecting is that your signal would look something like this. If this is the time, so this is ideal. This is ideal, okay? That you sample the signal with zero width of your time. So this is time here, right? But in reality, what will happen? This signal will have certain width. Some width would be there, right? Some width would be there. Now, depending upon your switch, how fast it can act and so on, you can reduce the width or you will have to settle with a larger width. That's okay. But this is how the switch acting in reality. This is how the switch will act in reality. Now comes the real issue. This is how the switch acts in reality, but this is like a pulse response. So if you remember the analysis which we did previously, if you send a pulse as an input, so input pulse, if you send, the moment you started observing, the current goes, or the EMF goes from the value 0, so 0 volts, to some epsilon volt, right? So the current has to rise, from 0 volt or millivolt, microvolt, whatever it may be, to some finite value, right? To some finite value. And the system will have some dynamics. Therefore, the signal will not rise in this manner, rather it would rise like this, what we saw in our previous lectures. Okay, so your actual signal would look something like this. Look something like this, depending upon the time constant of your signal. Depending upon the time constant of your signal may look very close to a rectangular pulse, or it may look very far from that, and that the factor which governs this is the time constant of your system. Okay, fine. So now your continuous signal, you have, whether the signal is good or bad, you have managed to convert your continuous signal to a discrete time signal. So now what will happen to your discrete time signal? Your discrete time signal would be y asterisk t, and what this would be equal to, the amplitude. So asterisk now represents the amplitude, right? So the amplitude at time 0, the amplitude at time 0 plus the amplitude at time t plus the amplitude at time 2t, and so on, right? So this is your discrete time signal. You don't have y of t as some function of t, you have this collection of values. And then what I can do is I can use a Dirac delta function to represent this idealized version of my pulse function. So I can write this as, see if you can appreciate what I'm writing. This is equal to y of 0. Okay, y of 0 is the continuous time signal. This is asterisk is the discrete time signal. Y of without asterisk is your continuous time signal, times delta of t, the Dirac delta function, plus the continuous value of the continuous function at time t at t minus capital T, and so on. Right? So you will basically know or quantify the values at different time intervals the way we do it here in this or in this one, right? But since there is a finite width here and the system has a dynamics, your discrete time signal will be governed by this equation, and therefore I can simply write y star of t, the signal in discrete domain, is n equals 0 to infinity, y, so 0 t 2t, so it will be nt, right? And delta of t minus t 2t and so on, so nt. So this is your discrete time signal from a continuous signal. Okay, and since we do Laplace transform all the time, what would be the Laplace transform of such a signal? So I can write this as y by r asterisk s. This y of nt is just a number. Okay, it's not a function. See, it's not a function of time. Y of nt is the amplitude or the magnitude of the signal. So it will simply come out. It will not be in the Laplace transform. So n is equal to 0 to infinity. It's just a constant y of nt. Laplace transform of the Dirac delta function, which is a shifting function, which will give me very simply summation n is equal to 0 to infinity y of nt. Remember, capital T is not a variable. It is the value of the time at which you have discretized the signal. So this will become e to the power minus nts. Yeah, this is the Laplace transform of the Dirac delta function. Fine. So this is how you carry out the discretization of a continuous signal to a discrete time signal. Okay, fine. Now the third step. The third step is conversion of a discrete output signal to a continuous input signal. And let's remind ourselves why we are doing this. We are doing this because we do not want the valve to operate in a discrete manner. We want the valve to open or close in a smooth continuous manner, right? So therefore, since the input to your controller is digital or discrete time, since your model equations are discrete time, obviously the output will be a discrete time signal. But discrete time signal means a discrete control action, which means a discrete physical mechanical movement of the parts of the system, and that's highly undesirable. So therefore, what do? You want to now convert that discrete output signal to a continuous signal. Fine. So now let's see what kind of signals do we have. Let's say we have the signal as m at time t, then you have m at time 2t, then you have m at time 3t, and so on. It goes on, right? So if we write the continuous analog as m of t, if we write the continuous analog as m of t, then what do we have? We have the value of m at time interval capital T, right? So my continuous function should be such that if I substitute t equals capital T, these two should match, right? That's my simple condition. And one way to do that is to do a Taylor series expansion. So now we are doing a reverse process. So I'll say m of t. And what will be the Taylor series expansion? The Taylor series expansion can be written as, I know the value at some given instant. So the magnitude at say nt, right? Magnitude at nt. About nt, the Taylor series expansion will become dm by dt, and this will be at nt, correct? And this will become t minus nt, correct? Small t minus capital n capital T, plus 1 upon 2 factorial d2m by dt at nt. This will become t minus nt squared, and so on up to infinity, right? And remember that this is a discrete signal. Okay, this is discrete. This is discrete because they are all calculated at NT, right? So therefore you are taking input. So your input is discrete. And what's your output? You see here, function of time squared. So your output is continuous time, right? But then there is a problem. Whenever there is a Taylor series expansion, you need to be careful. You need to be careful on the number of terms which you take in your Taylor series expansion, right? So let's see. So we say that we retain only the zeroth order derivative. Okay, and it's called zero order hold. Okay, so when we retain only the zeroth order derivative, what happens? Mt, m of t can be approximated. See, it's not equal to, will be approximated as m of nt, m of nt, right? So your signal coming from the output in a continuous domain will look like this, which means let me try to draw how this would look like. This is m of t, this is t, right? So when t is equal to 0, t is equal to 0, so I will have m0. 0t is m0. So let's say it has some intensity which is equal to this much, right? And then when t became equal to capital T, so you will substitute m of t. It had some other value. It had some other value, right? But what will happen in between? So you can write here, you can draw it in whatever manner. T equals 2t, t equals 3t. So there would be some signals. There would be some values of the signals. But this is like a step function. At time t is equal to 0, this was the magnitude. At time only at time t is equal to capital T, the magnitude became like this. So therefore, what's going to happen is your signal will look like this. And therefore now it will come like this. And so on, right? So your function, output function will look like step functions, which is again very, very close to having a discrete system only. So it doesn't help. So if you have a zeroth order hold, your system would look something like this. Your continuous signal will look something like this, and therefore it's not very desirable. What about the first order hold? Let us look into the first order hold. First order hold. So m of t will be equal to m of nt plus dm by dt at nt times t minus nt, right? So this is a discrete value. This is a discrete value. This is continuous. This is continuous. But then how does it look like? It looks something like y equals c plus mx, right? This is linear. This thing is linear in time. So therefore, for first order hold, how would your signal look like? Your signal would look something like this. This is m of t. This is time. So you will have at time t is equal to 0, you will have some amplitude or some magnitude of the function, right? And then how would it rise to t is equal to capital T? Like a continuous linear function, right? So not only will it rise like, if this is the continuous signal, if it is a discrete signal, this plus the effect of the gradient, right? See, this plus the effect of the gradient, right? So therefore, your continuous signal would look something like, depending upon the gradient being positive or negative, you will reach here, right? And again, you will reach here, and so on. Okay. So then what is going to happen? What's going to happen is, so this is t is equal to capital T is equal to 2t, t is equal to 3t, and so on. So now, if m of t corresponds to, if m of t corresponds to the opening of the valve, then the valve between t and capital T is opening continuously. See, good. That's what we want. Between this t and 2t, again it is opening continuously. Again it is opening continuously, and so on. And I just gave a random set of values, so therefore don't imagine that it will open and close and open and close like this. But whenever you have a discrete signal between two discrete signals, unlike the first order hold, unlike the zeroth order hold, now you are opening your valve continuously. Now between first and the third signal, you see, or you may see a change in the gradient of opening of the valve. To make it even more continuous, what will you do? You can keep on increasing the uh, the order of the hold, so that this will become even more smoother. Okay, and that way you convert a discrete time signal to a continuous time output signal, right? So then what we have accomplished? What we have accomplished is that we have a system. We have a system in which you have. So let's look here. We have a system in which you wanted to implement a control system for controlling the jacket temperature, controlling the process temperature by, and the only way to do that is by changing or controlling the jacket flow rate, right? Your input to the system will be epsilon, which is the difference in the process temperature and set temperature, but that will be controlled by a digital computer. Therefore, you would like this particular continuous EMF generated by thermocouple to be converted to a digital or discrete time signal. If the input is a digital or discrete time signal, the corresponding model equations also should be discrete time. But if the input is discrete time, the models are discrete time, the output will also be discrete time, and that will result into control action, which means changing the position of the valve in a discrete manner, which is highly undesirable. So the first thing which you need to do is you need to convert the continuous signal input signal to a discrete time input signal. You need to convert the model equation from continuous domain to discrete domain, and finally you need to convert the discrete time output signal to a continuous time output signal. Okay, we saw all of this in a sequential manner. So we'll take up further details on this after taking a small break. It is 3 minutes past 12. Let's restart at 10 minutes past 12. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, in the conversion of continuous input signal to the discrete time signal, so
Mhm.
sir, there ideally we are, if we account for the opening and closing of the switch, we will have a pulse function. So like if we measure the ideal condition, then in place of direct delta function, should we have a pulse function?
Yes, you will in reality have only always a pulse function. But remember that the pulse function is not symmetric. See, when we say pulse function, so let's see how a pulse function look like. So your ideal input that you would expect would be like this rectangular function. Okay, okay. A pulse function looks like this, which means it has a symmetry about this point, right? But what would be the response of the system to this kind of input? It would rise following 1 minus e to the power minus t by tau. This is the rise portion. So it would rise like this, and it would also decay following this one. So it would decay like this. Sorry, it would rise like this. It would rise like this and it would decay like this, right? So this is how the response would look like. You can call it as pulse function, but this is not a very elegant symmetric function. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, in this conversion of continuous input to a discrete time signal, sir, is it via output of the process model or like input to the process model?
That
Or
will be
is
an
it
input to the
input to
process
the...
model. It would be input to the process model.
Okay, then it's, I mean, in the diagram you have written it as U of S, so it will be considered as U of S, right?
Where can you?
Starting in the first start, in the above.
Here.
No, start of the class. This,
Yeah, this is how I drew.
no, above that, sir, the process. Here, this G of S, U of S, and like that.
No. Don't confuse it with that. This is what I said, that this is the general way of analyzing any process uh, in a continuous domain system. Okay, we have not here distinguished what G of S is, because we know that if you draw the complete flow block diagram of a controller, you won't get something as simple as G of S. Okay, so you will have the contributions from the controller, you will have the contribution from final control element, all of them will be there. So you must remember the the diagram for the feedback control system, right?
Yes, yes,
Uh,
yes.
all I have said here is that if you have an input output system, this is how it would look like. Okay.
In this y of y star of t or whatever, it is input to the process model function.
That for that you understand from here, so that you have a controller, which is a computer here. So you take your continuous signal, you convert the continuous signal to a discrete time signal, you give it to the computer, and then again you will have a converter which will convert discrete to continuous, and then you give it to the final control element. This is how it would work. Okay.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so it's time for us to start. So before I start, let us make a few announcements. So we will take today's last topic as Z transforms, a very interesting topic. But before that, let me make some announcements. You will have test 3. Test 3. It would be on April 9th. April 9th, which is a Friday. It would be between 11:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m., which means during class hours. Okay, during class hours. Syllabus: everything after test 2, which means transform domain analysis. Continuous plus discrete. Okay. Anything else which I need to tell? Yes. Pen, paper, email to, it's very important, specific email ID only. Please do not email it to my personal email ID, or there are some people who email to this ID and then they CC it also to my ID and all of those things. Please do not do it. Email, the email will be sent through that particular email ID, and you please send a reply only and only to that email ID. The test will be for 1 hour, and that's it. And then finally, assignment. There will be only one assignment. April 11th, which is a Sunday. You will be emailed at 6:00 p.m. Deadline 12:00 a.m. and no response will be accepted once the date changes. So you have six hours time. There will be substantially more number of questions. Obviously, you will have 6 hours time. You can look into the derivation. You can do whatever you want to. If I find anyone, and I will find such cases who are copying, I will summarily award 0 marks to those who have common answers, which means I will not distinguish between the case who has copied and the one who has supplied the other one with the original one. You will summarily be given 0 marks, and rest assured that I am good at finding such cases. Okay. So my final version for today is for these announcements. Test 1, 10% weightage. Test 2, 10%. Test 3, 10%. Assignment 20%, which makes 50% plus 50% from Professor Samantha's portion. So this is going to be the distribution. I repeat that make absolutely sure that you do not mess up or do any funny thing with this assignment part, because you see this carries 20% marks, which means this has 2 grades weightage. If you lose this 20%, rest assured that you will straight away go down by two grades. And if that leads to any adverse situation, emotional appeal, I mean, I know the BTech students know this, emotional appeals will not work with me. So whatever may the repercussions be, if you are caught copying and you go down by 2 grades and it results in any kinds of adversities, I will not be compassionate. I have been compassionate throughout. I have been listening to your appeals. I have been compassionate while uh, while grading you, and but this is one thing which I want to make absolutely clear to you, that if you are found cheating, if you are found copying, there will be no compassion. Is there any doubt or any question regarding these announcements before we move ahead?
Sir, what will be the syllabus for the assignment, the whole, everything you have taught?
No, no. So let me write down. Syllabus same as test 3. Okay. Again, I'm showing my compassion and giving you only the part which you need to prepare for test 2 on test 3. On the basis of that, you will be able to solve the assignment as well. Okay. So that will be the, so you don't need to worry about the state space domain modeling again. Okay. Yes, everything which has been taught after test 2 will come. Any other doubt or question? Is everything clear? Okay, let's proceed. Today is the last lecture, by the way. So these are the final 20-30 minutes for you to learn this particular subject before you decide to forget it forever. So let's take the last topic for today. And by the way, I will be away from the country for the rest of the year. So I will be available only online. I mean, obviously now also I'm available only online, but you are free to contact me via email or here on the Teams to get any of your doubts clarified. Today is the final lecture. There will not be any lecture on my part. Let me make it very clear. There will be no lectures on the part which I have been teaching. Professor Samantha will continue teaching. Now onward, there will be no lecture. Those students I have been getting, I have been contacted with by several students from MTech regarding the project allotment and project topics. So although I will be not available, I will be away to the US for the rest of the year. I'll be back in next year. I will keep supervising the students for their masters and PhD thesis. So if you have any interest and you want to know the details, first try to go through my website. You will get a very good idea on what we do and how we do. And if you want to know specific details on any particular topic, then please feel free to write to me the way others have been writing. I am quick enough to respond so that you can make an informed decision. Okay. So last topic for today is Z transformations. Z transformations. Okay. So we say that we are doing this analysis in transform domain. And whenever you had a continuous signal, what you did was you applied Laplace transformation to continuous functions, right? So when you have a discrete time function, a discrete time signal, a collection of discrete time signals, then you do Z transformation. So Z transformation is, well, it is defined for continuous signals as well, continuous functions as well, but it becomes more relevant when you have discrete time signals. So for discrete time systems. Okay, so now how it is defined? So Z of y of t for a continuous signal, and we will denote it as y of z bar is equal to summation n is equal to 0 to infinity, n is equal to 0 to infinity, y of n t z to the power minus n. Okay, so you have converted a continuous signal. You have converted a continuous signal to a discrete signal, and you have converted it from time domain to z domain. What does a Laplace transform do? A Laplace transformation converts a continuous function from t domain to s domain. In a z transformation, you will convert it to a z domain. And for a continuous, for a discrete signal, which is given as y of 0, y of t, y of 2t, and so on. In an analogous manner, this can be defined as y is equal to n is equal to 0 to infinity y of nt z to the power minus n. Okay, as simple as this. So what you will do, you will simply take the signal, the magnitude of the signal, divide it by z and raise it to that particular index. This is what z transformation is. Okay, so now you see here, we saw previously somewhere here, yes, correct. So let us copy this. Okay, conversion of a discrete time to a conversion of a uh, this was for conversion of a continuous time to discrete time signal from a continuous signal. Correct. Conversion to a discrete time signal. Conversion to a discrete time signal. So you have this one. Okay. Now when z is equal to e to the power ts, when z is equal to e to the power ts, what happens? Y bar asterisk s is equal to summation n is equal to 0 to infinity y of nt e to the power minus n. Okay, does that make sense? Z to the power, not e to the power. This will become z to the power, z to the power minus n, right? So when you substitute e to the power ts as z, you get this as your z transformation, and this is z of z bar of your y of t. It can be y of t, it can be, so let me just write it as y bar of s, right? So therefore, you see, if you know all the properties of Laplace transformation, you know that if you simply substitute e to the power ts, you are going to get the z transformation. So all the properties of Laplace transformation are very similar to, sorry, all the properties of z transformation are very similar to the properties of Laplace transformation. And what is the general framework? So general framework. The general framework is that you take your, so you model your system. So you model your system, you change it to an input output system. You determine the transfer function, and then y of t is Laplace inverse of g of s u bar of s, right? This was the general framework for Laplace transform. What would be the general framework for Z transformation? Well, exactly the same, no difference. Okay, so then you will model the system in discrete time domain. You will determine the transfer function. You will multiply the input function with the transfer function in Z domain, and then you will take the inverse Z transformation. So every single thing which we have done till today in the Laplace transform domain can be repeated now, for the discrete time domain or using the Z transformation. We'll take a couple of examples today, and then if you are interested in process dynamics and control, you can sit at home and solve all the exercises which we did for continuous domain Laplace transform using Z transformation. Okay, so let's see what will be the Laplace transform, what will be the Z transformation. Z transformation of a unit step function. Right? So what is a unit step function? A unit step function. So unit step function in a discrete domain, how would it look like? It would look like 1, 1, 1 and so on. So this is a unit step function, right? In continuous domain it was a or just 1 as time greater than 0. For a discrete domain it is 1, 1, 1 and so on, right? So therefore z of u, so let us call it as u, z of u would be what? The value of the function at 0, this is 1, times z to the power minus 0 is 0, plus the value of the function at time step t. So it is 1 z to the power minus 1 plus 1 z to the power minus 2 and so on, right? So this is nothing but summation n is equal to 0 to infinity z to the power minus n. Okay, z to the power minus n, and we know what this is equal to. So z of u is simply 1 upon 1 minus z to the power minus 1, right? And if we remind ourselves, then Laplace transform of a unit step function was simply E upon S. Okay, so in Z transform domain it is 1 upon 1 minus Z inverse. Let's take another sample function which is a ramp function. Ramp function. So what would be u? Ramp function increases with a constant gradient. So 0, let's say 80, then it will become 280, then it will become 380 and so on, right? So this is the discrete time ramp function with a constant gradient. So therefore z bar of u, in case we are not writing bar, let's write bar here. We will make it exactly the same. U bar of S, correct? So what will be Z of U? So this will be the value of the function at time t is equal to 0. So 0 times Z to the power 0 plus 80 times Z to the power minus 1 plus 280 times Z to the power minus 2 plus 380 times Z to the power minus 3 up to infinity. Okay, which means this is equal to 80 1 plus 2 z minus 2, no, minus 1 plus 3 z minus 2 and so on. Okay, and this, if you see this, this series, this will be equal to 80 z inverse upon 1 minus z inverse squared. Okay, so what is the procedure? Well, procedure is very simple. For all of the functions where you need to determine the dynamics, what you do is you determine the Laplace transform of the input function. In this case, what are you doing? What you did is you determine the Laplace transform, or you determine the Z transform of the input signal, and the Z transformation has this form. Okay, fine. So let's analyze. So the dynamics of a discrete time first order system. Okay, so the dynamics of discrete time first order system. So a discrete time first order system can be written as y of n plus 1 plus a is equal to a times y of n plus b times un. Okay, so we did already this beforehand. All I have done is I have just changed the notation, so the tau and all of these things have been clubbed into a and b. So the value of the function at next time instant depends upon the input function at the current time step and the value of the function at the current time step, and some system parameters which have been given as a and b. So for a unit step, for a unit step input, what will happen? Un is equal to 1 for all n. Okay, it's just 1 1 1 1 1, everything is 1. So therefore you have y of n plus 1 equals a y n plus b, right? A y n plus b. So what will happen here? Y1 is equal to a y0 plus b. What will happen to y2? This is a y1 plus b. This is equal to a y0 plus b plus b, which means y2 is a squared y0 plus 2b, right? And so on and so on. So I have already derived the general expression for nth, the amplitude of the function at nth time interval. This will look like yn. I encourage you to cross verify. This will look like a n y0 plus b a to the power n minus 1 plus a to the power n minus 2 up to plus 1. Okay, so this is the value of the signal at time yn, time tn. Okay, so now what's going to happen? The deviation variable, at t is equal to 0 will simply be equal to 0, right? So y0 is simply 0. Y0 is simply 0. There is no deviation at time t is equal to 0. So therefore, what do you get? What you get is yn is equal to b an minus 1 plus an minus 2 up to 1, which is nothing but yn is equal to b 1 minus a to the power n minus 1 minus a. Okay. So what does this tell you? This tells you that the value of the signal, the value or amplitude or magnitude of the signal at time interval n is going to be like this, right? So let's see how does the system evolve with time. So I have a, I have b. Let me put some value to it, and then yn. This is going to be equal to b is equal to b multiplied by 1 minus a to the power n, power n. So power n divided by 1 minus a. Okay, so what is the problem in the does, okay, n. Okay, we have not defined n, correct. No, so what is the problem in this? N is okay, n is an integer, so correct. So here 0 is equal to this plus 1. Okay. Another problem in the formulae. This will be same. Yes. Okay. See, this is how the system evolves with time. Okay. So let me plot this. So this was the deviation variable 0, and now the system is evolving with time. Now let me do one thing. Let me make this as 0.9. And now you see that the system saturates. And if I make it even smaller, system saturates even more quickly to the same value. Okay, so what is the importance of A? So let's go and see our this thing here. So when A is less than 1, you see here, I make it 1.5, the system diverges, system blows up, and I make it 0.5, the system converges to a constant value. So what is the importance of A? For A less than 0, the system is stable, and for system A greater than 0, the system is unstable, right? Did we see this kind of behavior in continuous time domain systems? Yes, we did see this kind of behavior in continuous time domain systems when you have dx by dt equals ax when a is greater than 0. Here this is 0 or plus or minus. Okay, so for continuous system a greater than 0, the system is unstable, and for a less than 0, the system is stable. Okay, so qualitatively we get the same behavior as we got previously. Okay, now you see, can we do the same analysis? Can we do the same analysis using Z transformation? Okay, so we have G of Z. This will be equal to Y bar of Z, U bar of Z, right? So therefore, Y bar of Z is U bar of Z times G of Z. Fine. Do we know U bar of Z? U bar of Z for a unit step function. What was U bar of Z for a unit step function? It was 1 upon 1 minus Z inverse. Okay, 1 upon 1 minus Z inverse. 1 upon 1 minus Z inverse. But the problem is, what is G of Z? Okay, well, it's not very difficult. You have G of S. So G of Z is unknown. So what is G of S? G of S for a first order system is K times tau S plus 1. Right? If this is the case, then I know that G of T, I will take an inverse Laplace transformation on both the sides. I will get this as K upon tau e to the power minus this will be t upon tau. Yes, this will be the inverse Laplace transformation. So if g of t, remember this is the for the first time that we are doing the inverse Laplace transformation of the transfer function itself. Till now we never did the inverse Laplace transform of the transfer function. But now what we are doing is we are taking a model in the continuous domain, we are writing the transfer function, we are taking the inverse Laplace of the transfer function, and then what we do now, from if g of t is k by tau e to the power minus t by tau, I can write g of z. This is what I want, right? So it will be n equals 0 to infinity. It will be equal to n. So this will be k by tau e to the power minus t will be equal to n times t upon tau, right? Fine. And now I know how to convert this. This is simply g of z is equal to k by tau, and sorry, we forgot z to the power minus n, z to the power minus n. Okay, so this is 1 upon this will become 1 minus e to the power minus nt by tau, okay, into z inverse. Fine. So then what we can do is we can assume. So what I will assume is let's say this is equal to b. Just for the sake of simplicity, this is equal to a. So g of z is equal to b. Did we forget anything else? Everything is fine, right? b upon 1 minus a z inverse. Okay, 1 minus a z inverse. And then finally what you do is y of z is equal to b upon 1 minus a z inverse times 1 minus z inverse. You simplify it and then you take a inverse Laplace transformation, and when you do that you will find that y of n actually comes out to be b 1 minus a to the power n upon 1 minus a, which is same as the previous one. So let's revisit what we did. What we did was that we wrote the usual expression. Our usual expression is that g of s equals y bar of s divided by u bar of s. Right? So similarly, we wrote g of z is equal to y bar of z divided by u bar of z. U bar of z is 1 minus 1 upon 1 minus z inverse. This is the z transformation for a unit step input. We know what was unknown was g bar of z. Sorry, g of z. For g of z, we first wrote for the continuous domain g of s equal to k upon tau s plus 1. We took the inverse and then we took the z transformation. Once we have the z transformation, what is y of z? Y of z is simply multiplication of these two factors, and when you take the inverse z transformation, this is how you will get. Okay, so the way you do inverse Laplace transformation, you will have to do inverse z transformation as well. Okay, or in other words, if you refer to certain texts on z transformations, what they will do is they would say the way you make a table for Laplace transformation, you can make a table for z transformation, and then using those tables you find the inverse and you write this. So this step from here to here I am leaving for you to carry out, and you will find that you get the same expression, and here you will find that your system evolves either like this, which means it diverges, or it evolves like this, which means it converges. depending upon the magnitude of A. Exactly the same thing which we did for continuous domain analysis. So this is what I wanted
Hello?
to teach. Yes.
Sir, here we have assumed, right, that g of z is equal to y of z by u of z. So how did we get that?
It's the
Because
same. It's the same thing. It is. So this one, right? This one. Are you?
yes,
Huh.
yes, sir, yes.
See, whether you do a transformation in continuous domain or discrete domain, the definition of transfer function remains the same, right? So this is the definition of transfer function in continuous domain. This is the definition of transfer function in discrete domain.
Okay.
And we also saw the interconversion. You see here that the Z transformation is actually nothing but Laplace transformation when you for a specific case here. So every property which you associate with Laplace transformation, that holds true for Z transformation as well. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So that's it. This was the entire course. We will not meet anymore. So good luck to the dual degree students for all of your future endeavors. I hope you enjoyed the course. And to the master students, hopefully when you come back, we will meet again in January. If you have any doubts or any questions, feel free to get in touch. Thank you.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, can you please share the marks of the previous two tests? Will it
Okay,
be
I'll do that.
possible?
I'll do that before I leave, which is in a week's time. If it is possible for me, I will share. Otherwise, good luck. Don't worry. Any other
Thank you,
thing?
sir.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.